share this one. कमलदलामल कोमल कांति कला कलितामल भाललते सकल विलास कला निलय क्रम केलि चलत कलहंस कुले अलिकुल संकुल कुवलय मंडल मौलि मिलत बकुलालिकुले जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते. Okay, that is the verse 14 that we're looking today. Kamaladala, Kamaladala, Amala, Komala Kanti, Kala Kalita, Amala, Bhalalate. So that's the way you break this. Kamala Dala Amala. So Kamala Dala Amala. Komala Kanti, Kala Kalita, Amala Bhalalate. So Kamala Dala is the petal of a lotus. Right? So Kamala Dala. And which part of the body is being referred to here? The head. Or the forehead, to be precise, right? Bala Late. The forehead is appearing like a lotus petal. And how does it go? Kamala Dala. Amala. Amala means a mala. Mala means dirt, dross. Amala means that which has no dross, that which has no dirt, that which has no that which has no kind of impurities in it. So Amala is also referred to as pure. So when you say pure, something referring to something as pure, usually that is one of the ways of referring to something in the negation, in the form of negation. And that is why a lot of times you see Amara, Ajara, Amala. So a lot of these words, negation words, are referred to when they are used for when you're trying to make the Saguna aspect. You use the Saguna aspect that you're familiar with, and then you take it to the Nirguna. Because our journey will always be from Saguna to the Nirguna. Or even in your meditation, when you sit, you may start thinking of form. But the best form of meditation is when the form slowly dissolves into the formless. Right? When the dissolution in our mind from form to formless happens, and why is that required? Because when we are in the state of form, there's reference to form constantly. There'll be some kind of impurity that will settle in. Because form will always have, even if we think of Bhagavan in the form, assuming we think of Narayana or Krishna or Devi in form, we think of that form as pure. But in our perception, in our own perception, in our minds, we have actually never perceived anything which is a pure form. It's hard for us to think something. You can think of, like the last week or the previous week, we spoke about symmetry. You can think of something which is as symmetrical as possible so that your mind does not waver. Why is amala required? Amala means stainless or pure or taintless. Why is that required? Is because when the mind sees some kind of distortion, the mind immediately goes to it. There is a Zen meditation that is usually taught, which is a very interesting form of meditation. Um, you can look up the internet. You can say Zen meditation on Zen wall meditation, WALL. Look up this wall meditation. You'll see there are people in Japan who follow this form of meditation. They will go and sit in a monastery or a small meditation hall, and the meditation seat will be placed in front of a wall. And when they sit down to meditate, they will look at the wall. So their back will be shown to the rest of the people, and they'll be facing the wall. And the wall will be spotless, clean. And the meditation is to just look at the wall, keep staring at the wall, so that in time, and now what will happen is, interestingly, that wall will suddenly become the screen for projection of our thoughts. Like how you have a projector, you throw the projection on the wall ceiling or the wall to see a video or something, whatever you are putting into the projector. And then if you have the projector lens turned on with the light, it will project onto the wall. So the wall will appear like the screen where the movie is being played. When you try doing this meditation, try this, it's very interesting. When you look at the wall, the mind will start creating a lot of thought patterns. It will start creating images. And when it does that, that wall almost becomes like the screen on which it's all being played. But then there is nothing really there. The only thing that is in reality there is the wall, is the blank wall. What happens is the mind starts looking at that. It will start slowly, the thoughts will stop. It will start falling off. The thoughts will rise, and slowly, when you're looking at the blank wall, it will not have content to process. The mind always requires some content to process. If you don't feed it with content, it will not know what to process. So if you train it well in this way, the mind can go into meditation, or the mind can go into sleep. So if we keep looking at that like that for a little while, then maybe you'll start drowsing off like that, because the mind doesn't have anything to process. So the moment it knows that it doesn't have anything to process, it will push you to sleep. That is why a lot of times when we are trying to meditate, the first thing that happens is after a little while we go into sleep. Because the mind doesn't have anything to process, there's no content, we are not giving content for it, it will go into sleep. Because in sleep, what happens is it will create content in the dream. Suddenly it will find a lot of freedom. Now it will play with the content that is there inside, and it will start creating the dream. So that way, when we look at this blank wall, if a small insect comes and sits on the wall, maybe a mosquito or a fly sits on the wall, where will our focus go? It will go on to that fly. Right? Even if a small creature comes, or something small, or if that wall, if you keep staring at that wall for enough time, there the small cracks, the small, if there is any ink, or small blemish on the wall will start showing up. Where was that before? It was there. You'll say, oh my God, so long I've been looking the wall. I've seen the wall so many days, but I never saw that crack. Because now that's because the mind searches for content. The mind is like this creature which is always searching for object content so that it can feed upon it. So here we are saying amala, kamala dala, amala, kamala dala, amala. Amala means pure. When we are saying pure, this is a way of saying that there is no stain, which means we are trying to move the mind into this. And why are we referring to the mind here? Because bhalalate. So here the reference is komala kanti kala kalita amala, kala kalita amala bhalalate. So her forehead, mother's forehead or Devi's forehead, is so beautiful, like a stain, a blemishless petal of a lotus, and it is komala kanti. It is very gentle, komala, tender, and there is luster in it. It's lustrous, and kala kalita means all forms of art is generated from there. Kala kalita amala phalalate. So um, so if you visualize here, this is your space, right? This is the forehead is your space of all forms of activity, psychological activity. All forms of psychological activity happens in this area. When you're thinking too much, manda valikyam, the head aches. Right? Why does the head ache? Because there's too much of activity that happens in this space. So our psychological, we live, actually our body lives in the present always. We don't. The body always lives in the present. Our mind rarely lives in the present. In fact, the mind doesn't live in the present. The mind creates imaginations in the future using data from the past. So this space, the forehead, is the place where all of this is happening. Now, what we're saying is Devi's forehead is lustrous. It is like this spotless or stainless petal of a lotus. And lotus is always a representation of knowledge, understanding, wisdom, right? Padma or the lotus is that representation of knowledge and understanding. Now, what is happening here is we are saying we want to make this amala, which means it's hard to make something. It is difficult to make something pure in that form, right? Which means you have to remove what is impure. So if you have a mirror, you have a mirror and you want to see the perfect reflection, you don't have to do anything to the mirror. You just have to remove the dust that is accumulated on the mirror. And then there is luster, komala kanti. There is luster which immediately reflects. So the reflection of that wisdom occurs in the forehead when we move slowly from mala to amala. From mala, which means impurity. When I'm saying impurity and form, what I'm trying to say is your mind wants to move in form. It wants content constantly. And which is why we do all forms of nama japa, or we do all forms of nama sankirtana. Why? We are saying that now, since the mind wants content, I will give you this content. I will give you a specific content that the mind should be moving around in. Let it not wander. Like if, for example, if you're reading Bhagavatam, why do we read Bhagavatam? So that the mind keeps rotating around the stories of Narayana, the Dashavatara, Krishna's Leela. Because the mind wants content and it wanders in the world for content, we give it content that is enriching. We give it content that uplifts the mind. That is why we fill all of this content. Why do we say do puja, do some kind of worship, do dhyana, in terms of you do nama japa. Throughout the day we keep doing japa. Throughout the day we keep singing the glories of the Lord, or we listen to nama sankirtanam, or we read scriptures, so that the content that you give the mind is repeatedly you give only this content about Bhagavan, about the Leela, about various stories. Or if you're doing Upanishads, you're trying to bring your mind into that space where you're constantly contemplating mananam, 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 nididhyasanam, mananam. You're doing that constantly. So you fill your mind with the content that can help go into a space of Amala. Now Dhruva, for example, was sitting and doing Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Right? At the age of 5, he chanted Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, the Dwadakshara mantra, Dwadasakshara mantra. He chanted that. Now, and then we say Narayana appeared before him. Okay. But think about what would have happened actually. Think what would have happened. This 5-year-old boy sitting and chanting. Now, Narayana appeared before him. Obviously, if somebody was there besides him, wouldn't have been able to see that Narayana. Narayana appearing in form before him is essentially in his perception, Narayana appeared. Now, how do you differentiate between when you're doing the japa, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, you already are visualizing a form of the Lord. Yes. When you're doing Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, if suppose Bhagavan suddenly appears as Vamana, then he will not understand that. Right? Did Bhagavan appear as Vamana to Prahalada? Prahalada is a small boy, so he could have appeared to him as a small boy, small man. He didn't appear like that. He came as Narayana, Chaturbhuja. Because in his mind, his mother has told him that you meditate upon Narayana. Narayana has this form. He is in Vaikuntha. So he visualizes that form and meditates upon it. And then that form appears before him, means it materializes in absolute clarity. See, there are two ways of now when you visualize a form, suppose you visualize a certain form, and then that visualization, you go to a sculptor and you tell the sculptor that this is what I'm visualizing, this is how I see Devi, This is how I see the form of my Ishta, Krishna, for example. This is the form, and I see it here, and I want you to make that form for me. And then the sculptor will make that form on the outside. And when that form is seen, when that form is done, and you see the form outside, what happens is there is immediate resonance of the form that you were visualizing inside and the form outside. And then what happens is the form that is outside now creates an imprint on you. So now this form becomes the form of reality. Till then it was in your visualization. Till then it was in your mind. So this is what happens when someone says that they got darshana of the Lord. They saw the Lord, which means that which was in their visualization suddenly appeared in front of them as though it appeared in flesh and blood. Absolutely clear, crystal clear it appeared, and then that form remained in them. Because whether in whatever way we perceive, the mind's eye creates this, but when the real eye see and that gets imprinted in, it's far more effective. So this process, when we see darshan, which is why when we go to any temple, we go to see Venkateshwara, we go to see Samayapura Mariamman. When we go and see the form, obviously you already have within you, you have the imprint of that form. But when you see the form on the outside, then it establishes the imprint even more. Right? And then what happens is your mind, your phala is now completely filled with that form. And if you notice, when that form is filled in your mind, there is no mala, which means there is no distraction. So when we say form becoming formless, this is also a state of formlessness. When my mind is filled with only the form of my Ishta, absolutely filled with that form, and there is nothing else, there is no mala. There is no distraction, there is no impurity. That becomes, because that form, whatever you're visualizing here, if you actually think about it, although it is a form in your perception, that form is so complete that it's almost as though there is no other form that exists, which means it pretty much is formless. See, what is formless? Arupa abdina, what does it mean? That it is not constrained by a certain form. That is arupa. Not constrained. Which means it's filled with no form. So when something is filled either with no form or a form, whether mind is thinking complete black or complete white or complete red or complete blue, when you're thinking, when all you're experiencing is only blue, is there any other color? Is there any other varna? No other varna is there. So it is also in a way, there is no color. When you say there is no other color, it means there is no color, because that when that is the only color that is there, there is no other color, which means there is no color. So in the same way, when that is the only form that is there, it means there is no other form, means it's formless. So the experience of someone who is having, even if be it a Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who is completely absorbed in this form of Krishna, or um, a yogi who's absorbed in samadhi, both their experience is similar, which is why we always bring this comparison between Purna and Shunya. We try to bring this out, right? We say Shunya is Purna because it doesn't lack anything. Nothingness doesn't lack anything. Hence, that no lacking makes it Purna. So it's a beautiful way to think about this. It's just we are used to thinking about duality. We are used to thinking about things as black and white, this and that, is and is not. Emptiness and fullness are pretty much the same. Because emptiness, just use of language is like that, right? Emptiness doesn't lack anything. Hence it is full. It's a funny way of looking at it, right? Fullness is full of itself, which means it's empty of everything else. So, and the problem, this kind of problem remains because our mind can only think of duality. So what we are saying here is Kamala Dala Amala, this complete, uh, you're just filled with a singular, it's like saying God is one, or if as a very interesting explanation, saying how do you say God is infinite or Paramatma or Brahman is infinite? Because if it is finite, just by definition, if it is finite, then there must be something else besides it. We say, how do we say Ekam Sat, Ek Onkar? There is only one Allah, there is only one Brahman. How do we say only one? Because, and when we say by virtue of saying one, we are saying it's infinite. How do you say it's infinite? Because if you go with the argument that, okay, if it's not infinite, then it's finite, then there is something else. Then what is that something else? So that is the experience of fullness. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate. There is nothing, there is nothing else that is over here. It's filled with this. And when it's filled with this, whether you are, if there is not, there is no space for anything else. There is no space for anything else. And hence it becomes amala. So when our mind, either it goes into complete stillness of no thoughts, no perception. I'm looking at this blank wall, but there is this light, Kamala, Komala Kanti. There is this light that is experienced. Because Rupa to Arupa, it is a very little transformation there. When Rupa becomes light, it is Arupa. So if you're experiencing the form as light, then it's already in the state of formless. Because what you're experiencing is just the experience of light. Okay. So this is the experience of how within our perception, Kamala Dala, Amala, Komala Kanti, there is this luster, Kala Kalita, Amala Bhalalate. Kala Kalita means there is this experience of Kala, all forms of Kala. As we said, Kala is not just art, Kala is aspect also. It means all forms of aspects. All aspects become clear to you. When you perceive something today, when you're looking at an object, when you're seeing it from the front, you're seeing one color, one aspect of the form. You go on this side, you see the other color. You go that way, you see another color. How many colors have to see before you understand an object? Infinite. But how do you get to infinite? You can't get to infinite by 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. Infinite is when this 1 plus 1 plus 1 drops and only 1 remains. In your perception, only that 1 remains. Then you are kalatita. This is what it means by kalatita, atita. It becomes all kalas are now experienced here and now instantaneously. Sakala vilasa kala nilaya krama keli chalat kala hamsa kule. So sakala vilasa kala nilaya krama keli chalat kala hamsa kule. So now it's talking about, so from the forehead, he is bringing the okay, Sakala Vilasa, as though it is the whole, all of this manifestation is shining. Vilasa, Sakala Vilasa, Kala Nilaya Krama, Keli Chalat, Hamsa Kule. So this experience within us moves like this Hamsa, Hamsa Kule, which means Hamsa is a swan that moves in the water gently. And when you look at the Hamsa in the water, it Keli Chalat, which means it moves very playfully. Like how this Hamsa or the swan moves playfully in the water. In that way, all forms or all aspects suddenly become so clear, and it becomes that clarity moves in your perception playfully. There's no more confusion. Right? When we are able to bring that amala within us, that undisturbed focus and attention and concentration within us, then all of this, when we start perceiving the world, suddenly it will all seem clear. The conflict that we have in our mind will also start appearing clearly. The confusions will also start appearing clearly. Why? Because you realize the confusion is happening to the mind. Confusion will happen to the mind will, something will resolve, the confusion will resolve, it will go away. It doesn't mean that suddenly now this person will become absolutely no confusion in life and everything clear. No, there will be confusion. But the experience inside is confusion is not happening to me. Confusion is happening because there is transaction in the world. Something needs to be done and there'll be a decision that needs to be made. Is this the right decision? Is this the right way to go? Whatever. And that confusion will be there because it's the mind that is operating. There will be that confusion. But this individual will know that confusion is not happening to me. It is happening in the space of the mind. So that becomes clear. And then moves smoothly. Keli lasat. So the Keli chalat. Keli chalat means Keli is to play. Playfully move. Like a hamsa. Right? We have spoken about this before. How do you move in this world, in this life, without friction, without any stickiness? Nothing sticks on to me. How do I move? How do I move without any heaviness, lightness? We spoke about light during Deepavali. Laghima siddhe. How do we get that laghima state? where I'm just moving smoothly. When you look at the swan, it feels like it's so very smoothly moving without any effort. It may be making a lot of effort underneath, but then when you look at it, it's moving so smoothly in the water. There is no friction, there is no difficulty. You don't see ಅಯ್ಯೋ ವಾഴರ್ತಿಗೆ ಕಷ್ಟಪಡ್ರ அப்படின்னுಲ್ಲ. It is not like just to live, there's so much of struggle. No. There's, when does that happen? When kamaladala komala kanti, kamaladala amala komala kanti, when the mind and the and your perception start shining with the luster of clarity, right? When that happens, then you move like the hamsa, and all aspects become clear. Kala, kalita, amala. All the aspects starts becoming clear in your perception. Alikula, Sankula, Kuvalaya, Mandala, Mauli, Milat, Bakulali, Kule. Alikula, Sankula. So this particular phrase is about bees. So there are three elements that come together in this particular phrase. Alikula, Sankula. The bees are coming together, swarm of bees. Kuvalaya, Mandala. Kuvalaya means blue lilies. They come together. And Bakula, Bakula Alikule. So Bakula is a tree, Bakula tree, and then the flowers of Bakula trees and the lilies, they look very similar. You can probably look up later. Look for blue lilies or blue water lilies, and look for Bakula fruit or Bakula flower. You'll see they look similar in terms of shape. One is really beautiful blue, the other is kind of whitish in color, but they look very similar in shape and form. And then you have the bees, right? You have the bees. So these three elements come together where in her mauli, in her braided hair. The hair she is braided. So from the forehead, you're talking about the hair, Devi's hair. And all of these three elements, all the three elements come together and form this beautiful ornamentation on her hair. Okay, so one, if you look at it as there are two flowers and one bee. Okay, so again, when we are, it is usually referred to as, whenever there's a reference made to bees and flower, it always it's a reference made to creation, because bees take pollen from one flower and drop it onto another flower. They are an agent. They're an agent for creation to happen. If you watch this National Geographic or some of these documentaries, they'll say that if the bees go extinct, maybe in a year's time, or maybe a few years' time, all forms of vegetation will go extinct, because there's nothing to carry the pollen and uh, to proliferate life. So bees are an agency for life to propagate. So you're talking about two flowers here. One is a Bakula flower and the other is Kuvalaya, which is the blue lily. And then you have the Alikula Sankula, the swarm of bees. And where are they? They are ornamented on the Mauli, the hair of Devi. So this whole verse, if you look at it, it is about the forehead and the hair and all of that. And then it also goes about the hair. Jaya Jaya He Mahishasura Mardini Ramya Kapardini Shaila Sute. Ramya Kapardini. Kapardini is open hair, is called Kapardi. She's a Kapardini. So this verse is about when we are able to bring our mind into that space of complete absorption, whether you go into an absorption of complete stillness, you use form slowly to get into a certain state of complete formless nirguna state, or you fill your experience or perception with form, one form, fill that experience with that form, right? In either ways, when you do that, there is complete stillness, some form of stillness is there, and in that stillness we experience a certain lightness. You experience light, kanti, and also keli chalat, which means you are able to playfully just move. You're not burdened by life, you're not burdened by events that are happening. This world is no longer a burden for you when this experience, even if this experience occurs within us for a 5 minute period, 10-minute period in my dhyana, in my sadhana, during that time realize that you are not constrained by your identification of the small identification that you are, right? That constraint is not there. You suddenly will feel a little freedom. And we feel that freedom, you move, you just feel like, okay, not too bad. Life is not too bad. Things are okay. Things may happen, come, go. There may be all of the drama that's happening, but I still have this space within me where I can feel this stillness. I can feel this completeness, right? And when this happens, then there is joy. So whenever there is bees and flower, it is an expression of springtime, vasanta kala, right? This is whenever vasanta kala or spring is experienced, it is experienced as or represented as the flower and the bees. So that experience of spring or vasanta kala that happens within us. Now, what does vasanta kala mean? It is joy. So when there is clarity, when there is clarity, when there is all the aspects are very clearly seen from where you are, because you are not that. You are not this mental drama that you have created about yourself. In that space which is there within you, then there is just joy. This joy is experienced as this playing of the bees and the flowers and the movement of all of that. Right? So that is the beautiful 14th verse. Then she goes into Jaya Jaya He Mahishasura Mardini Ramyakapardini Shaila Sute. What is the verse? कमलदलामल कोमल कांति कला कलितामल भाललते सकल विलास कला निलय क्रम केलि चलत कलहंस कुले अलिकुल संकुल कुवलय मंडल मौल मिलत बकुलालिकुले जय जय हे महिषासुर मर्दिनि रम्य कपर्दिनि शैलसुते ओम कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि सदाशिवायेति समर्पयामि जगन्नाथायेति समर्पयामि सद्गुरुनाथायेति समर्पयामि हरि ओम तत्सद्गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम
हरि ओम
हरि ओम गुरुजी।
नमस्कारम
हरि
नमस्कार
ओम गुरुजी।
ओम महोदय।
हरि ओम गुरुदेव।